continuing on our theme this month of building strong teams that conscious leaders are focused on, we are talking about trust. And I thought, who better to interview about trust than my friend, my colleague at times, David Sand, who has built an international business called You When I Win, has been president globally of Sight, and has built enough teams, authentic, conscious leadership teams, that I thought would be perfect to discuss today. So David, over the years, you've seen your business grow internationally. You've also had to shrink it down at times, and you must have learned a whole lot of that. Let me ask you this. In terms of building trust, whether that is trusting your people trusting you, your customers trusting you and the business, trust between your team members, what have you learned in that area? What are some of your leadership gems there?
Sure, Ian, hit me with a really deep question there. But I think trust is such an integral part of a success journey. There's a wonderful saying that says if you don't have integrity, you don't have anything. But trust is built off, I think, the concept of integrity and your value set. Where do you start? What kind of values do you bring with you to a conversation, to a client interaction, to a team meeting? And that really deep core of who you are you conscious of who you are in those circumstances and the values you bring? And a second component of it is, do those values resonate with people or not? And then to be consistent is another big component of trustworthiness.
Yes,
I think. And I sometimes battle with consistency. I'm a bit of the entrepreneur that's shiny over here and run over there and do the cool stuff. But when it comes to, I think, building trust in people, people expect a consistent David to show up.
Right.
This is not a different David today and tomorrow, although we also have to be mindful that some days are not good days. And some situations produce a behavior or a showing up that's not necessarily positive for building trust, right?
Right.
So, that leads me to the next point I had on that subject is how do you deal with yourself and with others when things aren't going so well? Or you've done something that has led to somebody losing trust in you. Or you've had a conflict, and then how do you deal with that conflict in a way that grabs back to that trust and builds it again? Because I don't think trust is an on-off thing. It's a continual thing that you continuously have to nurture and be aware of. And really, at the end of the day, if you don't have a good degree of trust, you're going to have obstacles to achieving the outcomes or the things that you want to achieve. So it's really it's a big subject.
It's a massive subject. So a couple of things come up from what you just said. The one is, I relate that consistency is my biggest trust struggle, by the way. What I have found is when you've got a really strong relationship, people are more forgiving. And so having a really strong relationship is a really important part. But coming back to this other part, which is this values, the integrity part. What are those values that you bring in your business that build that sense of integrity with your team and with your clients?
So I'll just pick up one that comes to top of mind when you talked about the forgiveness word.
Yes.
So one of my value sets is around if I need to forgive others as I expect others to forgive me.
Right.
So that's one of my values, right?
Right.
And it comes from my Christian faith.
Right.
But it's there.
Right.
Okay. So in being forgiving and somebody messes up, okay, they trust me far more if I'm forgiving in the conversation and my words are not harsh, but they are, okay, we've had something wrong, but it's okay to, and let's make sure that we don't do that going forward.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
approach.
Right.
That builds trust.
Yes.
So I believe that value builds trust.
Right.
Sometimes you don't get it back in return, but that's also okay. And then you have to process that
Right.
and still be able to be consistent and not get into a negative space.
Right. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So, in some ways, my experience is that trust is therefore not about perfection. It's about humanity, and it's about connecting human to human. And this forgiveness thing, it's a natural part of a relationship. And that when we are so-called perfect, sometimes people kind of go, what's missing? What am I missing? What's the bit of humanity here that I'm actually missing? And I found in my experience that when I could tell, you know, one negative thing about myself for every 9 positives, I was accepted much more as being trustworthy than if I told 10 positives.
Yes.
And so I'm presenting my humanity, and that's part of trust building.
Yes.
In fact, a little bit of vulnerability actually builds trust.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yes. 100%. I mean, life is messy, right?
Life is messy.
And part of looking after yourself is accepting your imperfections.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And when you go into relationship with somebody, a colleague, a subordinate, a client, of course we want to present the best version of ourselves.
Right.
But our best version of ourselves is not perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So getting to a space where people understand the vulnerability space, the strengths and the weaknesses, then produces a far more authentic relationship.
Yes.
Which is the heart of trust, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is the connection. It makes a really big difference. So I like to use the word alliance. And if you think about who is the human being in the world that you trust the most, it's somebody that you've got a strong connection with. And you know they're not perfect, and they know you're not perfect.
Yep.
So that whole thing is a really strong foundation on which we can then add the integrity and the reliability, or the delivery, which then builds that fullness of trust. But it's not about perfection, and I think a lot of people make that mistake.
Yep.
So just on that basis, if you think of the teams that you've built, and you're thinking of other conscious leaders, because I know you as a conscious leader, what is a message that you would have for them about building teams where trust is part of the lifeblood of the team?
You've got to love yourself, but you've got to love others. And this love word is not really part of the Harvard Business Playbook. Well, it hasn't been.
Right.
But I see it creeping in more and more.
Yep.
Okay? So loving people is really the kernel of it. If you love this team of people, and you say, and it doesn't have to be warm and fuzzy, but if you expect the best from them, you nurture the best from them, you want to see the best in them, you're prepared to go the extra mile to lift them up, and they feel your heart, then you win.
Leadership is love, not warm and fuzzies, not soft, not niceness.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you would be unloving if you didn't call out the elephant in the room,
Yes.
right? But that fundamental love is the basis of teaming, of trust, of success. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You will then get regular conscious leadership updates in your YouTube feed.